What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Trending in the AM live here on DSM Media. The Phillies extend their playoff lead over the Padres and the Brewers. Who is the bigger threat in the NFC East to the Eagles? Is it the Giants or is it the Washington Commanders? Also, Daryl Morey speaks out about James Harden's health at the end of last season, as well as the impact Tyrese Maxey will have this season. That and much, much more when we are back in 30 seconds.
Gets around in front. Joel Embiid intercepted. And Philadelphia has it.
What is up, everybody? Good morning. I am filling in for Phil for the rest of the week, so I'm your host, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98. To my right, my old Trust the Podcast host. This is my man, Stevie, is the host of Fist First podcast here on DSM Media. And as always, we're streaming live here on DSM Media's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook channel. If you're new to the channel, head on over to @DSM_media. Hit that follow button. We greatly appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, click the link tree in our bio to take you to every social media platform we are available on. If you guys want to be interactive on today's show, head on over to the Facebook or YouTube channel specifically. That's where we can pull up your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, like so. Adam, good morning. What's going on? Steve, how are we?
Good, man. It's good to be back with you on a show here.
I know. It's been... So for everybody that doesn't know, when we were wee lads, about 18 years old, 19 years old, Steve and I decided to start a Philly sports-based podcast. And do you know what we called it? Trust
Come on now.
the Podcast.
Come on now.
Come on. So that was a lot of fun, but we have not worked together since then. It's been a long hiatus, but we're back. Steve's back. Does a great job on our UFC Fist First podcast with my man Slav. But Steve, we're not talking UFC this morning. We got a loaded show. There's also a Thursday night football matchup, AFC West, Chargers, Chiefs, that we'll dabble into at the end of the show. But I want to start here with Daryl Morey's interviews. And guys, these were posted by RB Philly. So if you don't know the kid, if you don't know, give him a follow. He is incredible and keeps you up to date on everything Sixers. But here is the first one. And the main quote that he pulls up is, "It actually surprised me when he said what he said after the season." So what do we think this is about, Steve? Let's find out.
I'll say with James, again, more than any player I've worked with, he never says something's wrong. It actually surprised me when he said what he said after the season. For him to say that means that, there were more issues than he's spit on it, get on the floor, win it, whatever cost you can do, go out there and win. He's been one of the most durable guys in NBA history prior to the hamstring issue. I know he's worked hard to get it to a great place. It's in a great place right now. But during our run last year, he's never going to say, like, I'm not 100%, because he doesn't ever want to give any excuses, especially during the middle of a playoff run. And he's also never going to want to, indicate to his teammates or the other team that there's an issue. So I'll say
So that is video one. Daryl Morey goes on to tell John Clark this.
I mean, I think if you were to say obviously the new players on the team, I think are two-way players and are going to set the stage. But, winning the title really comes down to your best players. And probably the key things are, we need Joel to yet again give us an MVP level performance. We need James to be just himself. We don't even need 5 years ago James. We need the guy that we saw last year for most of the games. But the biggest inflection point is probably we need Maxey to take another step forward. And he can do it. He's putting the work in. Look, it's really hard. His rookie year was way ahead of schedule. His second year was way ahead of schedule. And to ask him to do another leap forward is asking a lot, but we do need it. but I wouldn't be surprised if he does it given how much time he puts in.
So it's asking a lot, but we do need it, Steve. I love that ending there by Daryl Morey, but it brings up an interesting point. So, let's start with the first video and just talk about James Harden possibly not being 110% healthy at the end of last year, specifically throughout the playoff run. It's something that people kind of alluded to or kind of thought was going on with James Harden. He just didn't look right. But many, many, many fans, national people, just people watching the games, chalked it up as age. He's not the same James Harden. Some called him washed. And I just couldn't get behind that. I just could not believe that James Harden went from 22-10 in Brooklyn, came over here for a month, looked fantastic. Everyone's screaming championship. And then all of a sudden falls off a cliff like Max Kellerman predicted for Tom Brady many, many years ago and just isn't going to be the same anymore. So how much do you believe the statement that James Harden was definitely not healthy at the end of last year?
Yeah, I think you could definitely tell, his health played a factor in just his consistency, right? Down that stretch, especially in the playoffs, it was very inconsistent. And you didn't really see that. You didn't really see that scoring Harden that you saw, back in Brooklyn or, back in the mid 2010s.
Right.
You saw him distribute the ball. We didn't really see a lot of scoring.
Almost too
faltered
much.
Faltered in consistency. And I think, I think you could definitely tell I don't believe he was washed.
Right.
I think you could definitely tell it was something health related.
Specifically the hamstring. And you just don't come off of that completely fine. And someone had related it to Chris Paul's injury back when he was transitioning to Houston. And he had the same hamstring problem. He had the same surgery in the offseason done with James Harden. And this was Chris Paul's timetable. And then when Chris Paul got to the X point, he had an MVP type season in OKC and led them to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. Now James Harden is to that point. He's got his first full off season. And, you brought up the word consistency with him. It was something specifically the Miami series, man. I remember the game he came out. What he hit 5 or 6 threes. He kind of took that game over down the stretch and you walk away. It was game 3 or 4 at home. I want to say it was game 4 to even the series 2-2. And you're walking away from that game, going back to Miami saying, okay, James is back. He's going to contribute on the offensive end a lot more than just running the offense and dishing the ball and stacking up assists. And the very next game in Miami, he went back to looking pedestrian. Something just wasn't clicking. Something wasn't right. He was turning the ball over at a high clip. So I 110% believe that he was not 100% healthy at the end of last year. Now that brings me to the next comments by Daryl Morey, the next video, and that is clearly we need Joel Embiid to play at the highest level that he has been, and I think you're going to see that. That's over here. Okay,
yeah, it's a given, right?
Now the next two, not that both of them can or won't be true, but I want to ask what's more important. Is it he said James Harden is not going to be James Harden. We don't need him to be James of 5 years ago. You're not going to get James from 5 years ago. He didn't have travel back in time and get back into his Houston body, and he's not going to drop 32 a night like he did back then. He doesn't need to. But I think anywhere from 24 to 26 points per game a night from James Harden, efficient, effective, not missing around the rim, not hesitating, coming around a screen at the top of the key. I think that is the most important thing for this Sixers team and this offense, more so than what his answer was, and that is Tyrese Maxey taking another step. Not that Tyrese Maxey cannot or will not do it. I think it's incredibly tough to continue to ask the kid to take astronomical leaps.
Right.
Like what he did from year 1 to year 2. Dude, the clip he shot the three-point ball at was something I don't think NBA history has seen. Coming out of college, he shot under 30%, Steve. And then in the NBA in his rookie year, on limited playing time, right, snuck into the rotation in the playoffs. He improved it by a little. He shot over 40% from 3 last year. Wow. So to ask him to not only continue that, but to add more to his game at this point of his career, playing next to 2 superstars, that's incredibly difficult. So I think the answer has to be the veteran James Harden getting back to somewhat of what he was in the past.
Yeah, and I think we hit on two words there: consistent and efficient, right? Because if James Harden is consistent, if James Harden is efficient, I think he makes the surrounding crew better. I think he allows Maxey to take that next step.
Okay. Yeah, no. That makes a lot of sense because, like I said this to you pre-show, he's going to have more of an overall impact than Tyrese as well, unless Doc switches things up in the half court this year. When they're on the floor together, Tyrese is going to be more off ball, not 100% of the time, but James is the conductor of this offense.
Right.
So, like you mentioned, put the word consistent over here in a box. We know that that's a given. He has to be consistent night in and night out, almost efficient. What was he not just from 3-point range? He'd go 5 for 8 one night from 3-point range. He'd go 1 of 6 the next night from 3-point range. He has to be more consistent there. But dude, he was so inefficient around the rim last year, and it's just something you've never seen out of James Harden. He's a top 75 player. He is one of the greatest all-time scorers of the basketball that this game has ever seen. And he got here and got into this playoff run, and all of a sudden couldn't finish through contact. Couldn't finish that floater in the paint, that mid-range that we've seen for years now. I don't know how that translates to, he didn't want to embrace the contact with the hammy. He didn't want to get hit too hard, take a spill. I don't know what it was. He was going up weaker with the off leg. I don't know. But whatever that injury was that held him back, that needs to go away this year because it opens up everything within the Sixers offense. Like what you saw in the Knicks game and the Timberwolves game and the Cavs game early on in his tenure with the Sixers, when he was putting up 32-8, 25-11, those type of numbers, which I'm not even asking for that high of scoring, but when he was doing that, the offense was so free-flowing, and they were getting out in transition, and he's leading the break, drops it between his legs to Joe. Joe slams on someone, right? Like, it was so exciting. Everyone was like, oh, my God, this is what we've been waiting for. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, that change in his game, his aggressiveness, his consistency goes away. The offense starts to look different. Tobias Harris is asked to do more. Tyrese Maxey is obviously asked to do more. You need more scoring from your bench. You don't need all of those things if James Harden is healthy, efficient, and consistent. So those are the three biggest things. And again, to wrap this kind of up here, I'm not downplaying the effect or the impact that and even more improved Tyrese Maxey will have. If he continues on this pace, he's a budding superstar. I get it. But I know what James Harden can be. Again, not asking for Houston Harden. I don't think that's in the realm of possibility. But 24 to 26 points per game, around double-digit assists is a given. Not turning the ball over, taking that three when you come around a screen at the top of the key and there's no one within 4 or 5 feet of you, I need you to pop that, James. And if he does that, I think people are downplaying how great he and this team can be this year. Like, I think it takes it to a whole nother level rather than just Maxey being even more explosive and more spectacular. So it'll be an interesting conversation to keep an eye on. And the best part is, they love each other. like literally the Sixers
watching their
Twitter,
videos is awesome.
The Sixers Twitter account posted something yesterday and it was Harden smiling. And it was like someone had his hand on his shoulder and they cropped him out at first and they said, guess who makes him smile like this? And then they put on a thread and it's like 3 pictures of him and Maxey next to each other cracking up. You saw it from the moment Harden got here when he wasn't playing yet in his Sixers uniform and Maxey was starting. And Maxey started out a game slow. I don't know if it was the Milwaukee game or where. I think it was the Milwaukee game. And Maxey was starting out slow, not being aggressive. And Harden kind of pulls him aside and says something to him. The next 3 possessions, Maxey takes it to the rack, finishes the third one off with an N1. And Harden, if you stands up and he literally goes, "Thank you." If you read his lips, "Thank you." So day one, he steps in and takes this kid under his wing. That's another point as to why he's so
James Harden going out there and being the veteran that he is, right?
Right. And helps Tyrese Maxey.
Exactly.
So
and that's why his off-court contributions, just him being a veteran, is going to help this team.
Right. Being a top 75 player. Like exactly. all that BS coming out of Houston and then Brooklyn, that he was the problem. He's the bad teammate. I think all that's already put to bed in 5 months, 6 months here in Philadelphia. Like everything,
go watch their videos partying.
Right. Or how about the fact that he took about $16 million less than what he needed to do to open up money for the rest of this roster to be complete, to compete for a championship, right?
Group of guys that want to win. Come on.
Right. He wanted PJ Tucker. They get PJ Tucker. They bring in like they did a lot this offseason. We're not going to get into that right now. We are going to move on, but great interview by Daryl Morey. Go check it out if you haven't already. And let us know who you think the more important piece is this year, a healthy Harden or an improved Maxey. All right, Steve, let's move on to the Titans, because once again, they continue to mow down bad teams in front of them. They're coming off a sweep versus the Nationals. Now they've already won the series in Miami. I believe they went 5-1 against the Miami Marlins this year. In their series, they beat Sandy Alcantara 4 or 5. I think they went 5-1 or 4-1 against Sandy this season. He is the odds-on favorite for NL Cy Young. Just things you haven't seen before that continue to tell you this team feels and seems different. But now with the Eagles and football back, they're almost on the back burner. Like the level of interest, the conversation around this team, the fire around this team doesn't quite seem to be there at this very moment. And it should be, right? Like if you watch the game last night, Bryce Harper homers, JT homers twice. Reese Hoskins takes a ball off the hand, which x-rays were negative. He's not going to play today, but Rob hopes he's okay. The last thing this team needs is another injury to a very important piece. But what's your overall thoughts before we get into specifics, just on their recent play? They've won 7 of their last 8. They've won 5 straight series. That's not talked about. They haven't won 5 straight series. What am I talking about? They just lost on the last. 5 straight series to the Marlins. That's what I meant to say. So they've been on fire as of late. What's your overall thoughts on their kind of play?
Yeah, I think this kind of play really brings in a personal favorite of mine is momentum, right? Coming down to the stretch here.
I introduce you my friend Mo.
Yeah,
Mr. Mo.
Let me introduce you to my friend Mo.
Yeah.
I mean, momentum coming down the stretch here, going into playoffs with momentum.
Right, being hot at the right time.
Right? Especially when your top guys are hot, right? You don't want to see your top guys slumping now. Your top guys are hot.
So can I ask you if there's a fear at all that they've struck too early? Now, there's a lot of time left in the season, but there's about, 2.5 weeks left? Had they struck a little, would you like to see this in the last 2 weeks? Or can they continue this over the next 2 weeks?
No, I think they continue this. I think they know what's going on here, right? What do they got? I think they got 5 more series left.
What would that be? Yeah,
got
maybe
the Braves,
a little
Blue Jays, Braves. Yeah, about 5 more series left.
Okay. Yeah, no. So, and the big thing coming down the stretch here is you have to show a different side of your ball club now. What you've been able to do over the last 2 months or so is mow down lesser talented teams on your schedule. Over these next 5 series, I know you have Atlanta, you have Toronto, and you have Houston to finish the season. So I don't know who the other 2 are against, but I know those are 3 of the 5. Those are playoff caliber. Those are playoff
we play the Cubs
teams.
too. Just swept the Mets, so don't count out the Cubbies.
Yeah, and I bet on the Mets 2 nights in a row, so that's freaking fantastic. But off of that negative, maybe I'll just keep betting on the Mets so they continue to lose and continue to falter, which Bailey does not do. However, stupid pun. Okay, yeah. So you have to see a different side of this ball club in that they have to go out there and continue to beat good teams. They did that in the beginning of the year, Steve. There's a reason they had the tiebreakers over the Brewers, Padres, and Cardinals. They won the season series over the Dodgers. They're 500 with the Braves heading into these last 2 series against them. So they've beaten good teams, but it's been a while since we've seen it. Because since that all has happened, you've really got a lot of bad teams and the Mets, and you've lost damn near every game against New York. So we haven't seen this team look good against a playoff caliber team in a very, very long time. Now, let me ask you, who is or what is what is the most important piece to a playoff run here in Philadelphia? Who, what are you thinking?
So I was stuck between two here, right? I was stuck between your lineup fillers, outside of Bryce, outside of Reese, outside of JT, them producing. And then I was like, you know what? The more I thought about it, I was like, this team has the ability to win with just their top guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think you see that night in and night out. So for me, I think it's going to have to be your starting rotation consistency.
Okay.
Because I feel like you start to see their consistency falter. You can have Aaron Nola go out there and throw a stud game.
Right. Like bounce
And then,
back
well, yeah, you can throw a stud game against a top team, and then he what's up? That Diamondbacks game? 10 hits?
Good God. Yeah, I think he didn't get through 4.
Just absolutely brutal, right?
Yeah.
And that you can't see that consistency falter in the stretch. You can't see that consistency falter in the playoffs. So I think for me, that's going to be the biggest thing moving forward. And you saw Kyle Gibson last night.
Great.
Go out there and throw a great game.
He's another guy, though, man. That's just
inconsistency. It's up and
so
down.
much up and down.
In the stretch, you can't see that. You have to go out there and you have to be consistent in your pitching.
Right, and I'll throw one more big piece at you. It's Mr. Health, my friend Health, is not helping out the Phillies whatsoever. Obviously, don't know the timetable on Nick Castellanos. He's got some work to do still because he has to play right field. He can't come back and just DH with Bryce in that slot. So he has to come back and be able to play defense in right field. And with that, I believe it was the turf toe thing that was bothering him. Something else came up, but he was dealing with turf toe for a while. So getting Nick back is going to be important. At the top of that rotation you just spoke of, Zach Wheeler. Like, when are we seeing Zach Wheeler again? It was supposed to be 2 or 3 starts. It feels like we're going on 4 or 5 now. Maybe my timetable's off, and it just feels that long. But Zach Wheeler needs to get back and get healthy for this playoff run that the Phillies are hopefully about to go on. But yeah, man, like JT spoke on it, right? So they have this thing. It's called the daycare at the Phillies, like with Stott and Mayton, all the young guys stepping up and coming up in big moments. The daycare does it again. JT was, they talked about it last night, and after JT homered twice and Bryce homered, JT said it's time for the senior citizens to start to pick up some wins and contribute here. And I just think the fact that they embrace it, the fact that they kind of the young guys and the veterans on this team seem to mesh so well. Like, you don't notice a drop off from Stott, and you don't notice a drop off from Harper and JT and Reese to Stott and Bohm and Mayton and stuff whenever they had to play. So it's been very nice. But here's where I'm leaning. I don't want to give you the answer that it's Bryce, even though if Bryce got hot, and I mean hot, last year hot, right, he can propel you to an even another category, right? Another level.
Oh, absolutely.
My guy is JT. I don't know. Since Bryce went down, JT's slashing over 317. He's driven in almost 50 RBIs, or close to 40 to 50 RBIs, and he's homered, I forget how many times since Bryce went down. So he stepped up, and now that Bryce is back, he's still doing it. I don't know that we've seen this offensive output from JT Realmuto since he's been in a Phillies uniform.
No, I agree.
This is the greatest stretch of offense we've seen from him in his time here, is it not?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's his whole stint with the Phillies has been up and down. I think to a lot of the fans, a lot of the fans feel that way.
Well, earlier on this year, when the team as a whole was totally inconsistent and playing down to what their expectations were, but JT I was right. Like, he looked terrible at the plate, and then he looked subpar behind the plate. I'm like, dude, you're struggling offensively. I at least need you to be top 1 in the category we expect you to be top 1 defensively, and you're not. Right. And there's always been this little bit of I don't know, kind of whisper that he doesn't call the best game behind the plate for his pitcher. So as of late, it's not just the fact that he's hitting for average. The power numbers are there, the slugging percentage is there. He's driving in runs, and I hated the idea of JT Realmuto in the cleanup spot. I want to know part of it. From the beginning of the year, that last year they mixed around with it. I hate it because I didn't think he had the pop that he had that he's showing right now. I love him in the 4 spot. There's nowhere else I would put him. I would put no one else ahead of him in the 4 spot. Bryce, I know they tried Bryce clean up here and there. No, Bryce has to be in the 3 hole. That's right. Where Bryce needs to be slotted, right? Kyle's leading off. I think Reese, and now he's hurt, but when he comes back, even I think you need to swap Reese and Alec. So if it was me, and I know they've done it where it's Kyle, Reese, Bohm, Harper, JT. If it's me, it has to go Kyle, Bohm, Harper, JT. If Castellanos is healthy, Castellanos 5, Reese 6. If he's not, Reese 5. And then you have, let's say when Castellanos is healthy, you have him 5, Reese 6, Segura 7, Stott 8, Marsh 9. That's I need this lineup to be fully healthy, man. Because that is ridiculous.
Sounds like a playoff roster.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. And that's what they've been proven to do. So do they not just I've talked about this all summer long. And I'm kind of getting sick and tired of saying it, especially because, they go on the West Coast trip and they shit the bed, man. Go 1-5 on that West Coast trip. And it left a really bad taste in our mouth. And it's like, wow, they're really going to fold. And then Nola comes out with a terrible start again. It's like, wow, here comes September Knowles, right? They've answered the call again. They've bounced back from adversity again when their backs were against the wall. This team, it feels different, man. Now, I'll ask you this question. How different, Steve? Is it just different enough to end the playoff drought and get into the dance? Or is it different enough, if healthy? I'm not going to come out here and say if they don't have Zach Wheeler and they don't have Nick Castellanos and they don't have X and they don't have Reese Hoskins, they can make a run. But if they're fully healthy, is it different enough to make noise at the dance?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen to the names that you mentioned going down their batting order, dude. Get Bryce in the playoffs. Bryce in the playoffs.
I just want to see it so badly.
Oh, you get Bryce in the playoffs. Yeah, the Phillies are making noise. The Phillies are making noise, especially like we said. Our friend Mo, bring in that momentum.
Can I introduce you to my friend Mo? He's a sweetheart. Yeah. But dude, it's been all I've wanted to see since he's in a Phillies uniform. Also, shout out to Bryce in his time being in a Phillies uniform. He's already cracked his 100th home run last night. It feels like he just got here. What were we? Junior year of college when he signed with the Titans, and that was a crazy time. Like that's what this feels like as well. Like when Bryce was brought here, you had tempered expectations because the roster as a whole, the pitching staff wasn't great. But you kind of it was must-see TV, at least for the first month or so of him being in a uniform. It's back to being must-watch TV almost night in and night out. And obviously competing with football is extremely difficult for me, man. Like it's going to be tough for me on Sunday afternoon. Now there's no Eagles, so it makes it a little bit easier, but it's week 2 of the NFL versus game 168 of the Phillies.
Right.
What am I watching?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it a 2 Is it a 2 TV type of setup? Is there a laptop out? I don't know what to do. And I think this is why you kind of see the attention down on them right now as well. And it's not fair. Like it's really not fair to them.
It's not fair, right? Because we're talking about, the final couple weeks here of the season, the stretch for the playoffs. It's got to be a 2 TV day, or it's got to be a laptop day, because these games are just going to get more exciting.
It's against the Braves, too. It's game 3 against the Braves.
Exactly.
Now, I will tell you this. If they lose the first 2 in Atlanta, I'm not watching Sunday. I'm watching football.
Yeah,
if it's 2-0 or 1-1 heading into Sunday, you're goddamn right I'm watching. But if they've already crushed my hopes for the weekend, see you next week, boys. I'm not watching today.
Yeah, right. Give me the Blue Jays series.
Yeah, because it really has, like, in their minds, right? They're looking at fan base attention, and for all people have said was, well, be good. You go, because they haven't been good in so long. They haven't made the playoffs in so long. Well, be good, make the playoffs. Well, they're doing that, and still they can't garner any respect or any attention. It's kind of sad, but that is the power of an Eagles town. You really can't blame the fan base here. But speaking of Eagles, let's move on. We can always circle back to the Phillies if we want to towards the end of the show. Let me get your thoughts on the Detroit game, because I know you haven't really spoken on it all week. And then I kind of want to talk about the NFC East and how it played out. The other two teams won, while the Cowboys obviously lose on Sunday Night Football to Tampa Bay, and they end up losing Dak Prescott for what Jerry says is 4 weeks. Dallas, if there's any Cowboys fans, just please, and this is coming from me, don't get your hopes up. Like, Jerry, it's week 1, and Jerry is already throwing shit at the wall, hoping it sticks. He's not coming back in 4 weeks. There's
Jerry
no
Jones
shot.
saying that they're winning with Cooper Rush.
Yeah, stop it. But anyway, thoughts on the Lions game, man? Because I did a show yesterday, and the title was "Why the Jalen Hurts Criticism is Over the Top and Unnecessary." Like, I didn't understand all the criticism, and you know how I feel about him as a passer and how I need to see improvement. I don't think this was the game to critique in that manner. I think he played very well, in fact, on Sunday. I thought Miles Sanders was great. A.J. Brown is as advertised. And then, obviously, the defense had a lot of question marks. What did you think? What did you make of this game?
Yeah, I mean, that defense made the game a little bit more interesting than it should have been, right? But I actually did catch a little bit of your show yesterday, and no, I totally agree. Like, I'm in the same wagon with you as
kind of
Hurts.
the wait and see
Right.
kind of thing.
But we talk about it all the time, the eye test, right? It wasn't fully in effect Sunday, but
No,
like you said, he's making throws that he didn't make last year, right? That throw to A.J. Brown, that whether you
that
like
was the
him or
best
not,
throw of
that
his
was
career.
right,
It was the best throw of his
hands
career.
down, best throw of the career. Yeah, it's these little things of improvement that you want to see in him as a passer. Obviously, he's going to be fine on his legs. What did you rack up over
90 yards and a touchdown?
Over 90 yards on his legs, yeah. But yeah, I think I'm excited for the Vikings game because I want to see even more
It's an
progression.
early test.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man, a little bit more nervous than I should have been on Sunday.
Yeah, man.
But that's not Jalen Hurts' fault. That is
No, not at all. I mean, the offense went out in week 1 and dropped 31 points. Obviously, we know the Eagles finished with 38 from a pick 6 from James Bradbury. But I said this yesterday as well. Like, you were over for the game as well, and obviously the intensity and the energy. Like, we were all pumped and hyped, and for the first half and then they got that 17-point lead, and we were all sitting there watching the game, but there was a lot more side conversation going on. Kind of reclined, you relaxed, right? You felt good heading in the fourth quarter. It's almost like the defense took on that energy. They relaxed. They had a 17-point lead. And next thing you know, you blink, and here we are on the edge of our seats again, holding on for dear life. And, dude, if they don't pick up if Jalen Hurts doesn't succeed on that quarterback sneak, Detroit very well wins that game with the ball back, because I did not trust the defense. I did not trust Jonathan Gannon at that point in time at the end of the game.
Right, and you saw all that pressure early on. And then slowly but surely
it disappeared.
Got softer and softer. And just like that, it's a game again.
Yeah.
It
was the bend but don't break BS that we witnessed all of last year, and it's the same problem. Last year you gave them the excuse of the personnel. Well, guess what? All the talent on the defensive side of the ball, you don't have that excuse, John, right? So when I'm seeing the same scheme being implemented in the fourth quarter that I saw all last year, and I'm seeing the same result, meaning bend but don't break, but you break at the end of every damn possession because they're scoring 6 at the end of every possession, it doesn't work. That's not the mantra of the bend but don't break. What'd you say?
You don't want to see that against a bad team either, right?
No, and that's why
against the Detroit Lions.
Yes, listen, a win is a win. I'm happy with the win. The fan base was far too negative this week over a win. I read the stat over and over again. The playoff teams last year versus non-playoff teams last year went 1-5 in week 1. The one win being the Philadelphia Eagles. So it could have been a lot worse, guys. But it doesn't leave you with the greatest feeling on a victory Monday and throughout this week because of how the defense folded towards the end. But that has nothing to, like you said, that's not Jalen Hurts' problem. The fact that they only won by 3 is not Jalen Hurts' fault. They should have won by 2 scores. Should have won by 14, 17, right? So, and then the whole leg conversation, I want to get off of it, but like, what did you want him to do on Sunday? This was box score watching. This was check the box score after the game. Oh my God, he ran 16 times for 93 yards, blah, blah, blah. And he was 18 of 32, didn't throw a passing touchdown. Same old Jalen. No, if you watched the game, you knew that there was a lot of breakdowns and a lot of mistakes up front on the offensive line. You knew that Detroit was desperate, knew they weren't good enough, and brought the freaking house in the first half against Jalen. And his legs were the only thing that kept them in the game and extended drives and picked up first downs. So you cannot use that as a jab against him this week. Now, you're right. Monday night is a test. And if he starts to if he starts to lead the pocket too early, not go through all his progressions, missing, Dallas Goedert or Quez Watkins or Devontae Smith open down the seam or over the middle of the field, then we can have that conversation about how he didn't progress. But last week was not the example, was not the situation to bring that argument up in. So I thought it was really, really unfair.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Just to shoot back to the defense one sec. A little positive note I think we can mention here. I saw a little stat yesterday morning, I think it was. And talking about Darius Slay and James Bradbury.
Oh, the numbers, yeah.
Yeah, so when they were, I don't know if you guys talked about this last show.
Nah.
But when they were targeted, Jared Goff was 4 for 15. So that's a positive, right?
Oh, it's a big positive. I saw Avonte Maddox got beat up a little bit. So Avonte Maddox was targeted like 6 times, let up 5 receptions, like a 129 pass rating. Darius Slay was very good. And then even better, well, I'm pretty sure of those 4, Bradbury only allowed 1 completion of those 4. Wow. Slay allowing the 3 or so. So Bradbury was as advertised as well. Slay is Slay. I love Darius Slay. The disrespect on his name sometimes is ridiculous that he's not like a top 6, 7 corner still. Kaiser White. Well, listen.
Jordan was the highest rated defensive player on the Eagles.
Yeah, except Jonathan Gannon only played him 22 snaps.
Exactly.
He played Marlon Tui Peloto more than Jordan Davis.
Why trade up to get this beast of a man? Like,
to not play, and it's week 1, and so we'll see. But man, that really bothered me. But Kaiser, I don't know, and we know that he's never going to have extremely high snap counts because of his motor. We know that he's not a 3-down defensive tackle. We know they're a rotation defensive line. But if he was, all I needed to see was him play more than Marlon Tui Peloto. That's it. If he didn't play more than Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave week 1, I understand it.
Exactly.
But the fact that this dude who probably hardly made your roster, he's your 5th defensive tackle, played more than this behemoth of a man who, and the numbers don't lie, 2.9 yards per carry for Detroit when Jordan Davis is on the field, 10 yards per carry when he's off the field. Come on, man. What are we doing here? But Kaiser White was phenomenal. He had the deflection on the interception. He was all over the field. I thought Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, his name was called a bunch. He looked really good, making plays over the middle of the field, a bunch of pass breakups. So the new guys kind of flashed. I think Nakobe Dean only played like 4 snaps, dude. Like, I don't know if he was on the field at all. And let me ask you that. How is that ridiculous to you? Like, I know I like TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards is a nice player, and he's still very young, right? So I see what they see in him. But the fact that TJ Edwards is going to play like 80+% of the snaps while Nakobe Dean plays under 10, I think is asinine.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think, I think Nakobe Dean has more of a potential to be a difference maker.
Yeah, he was supposed to be a top 16 pick prior to the injury concern of last year's draft. Right, false to us. People, he's the steal of the draft. It's week 1 again. I'm not saying he's not going to see the field.
Right.
But you can't tell me that he's not ready, that he's unprepared, because the kid's football IQ and his leadership ability is out of this world, off the charts. He was getting first team reps in training camp, even in the final week in practice. So I don't know where the disconnect was week 1, that he didn't touch the field really. Also, dude, I'm sorry. I know I'm positive about this win. Did you see Gannon had them in a wide 9 while they're getting gashed in the rushing attack? Gannon just completely spreading this defense thin over the middle of the field while Detroit's offensive line is getting crazy push. DeAndre Swift's going for over 100. Jamal Williams having success. It was unreal. Think we lost Steve here for a second. He is frozen. So let me move him out of here and see if we can bring him back in a second. All right. But with that being said, to my next point of conversation is I want to focus more on the Eagles and this division going forward. Because obviously, as we know, the Dallas Cowboys not only lose, they're the only team to not score a touchdown in week 1 across the NFL, but they lose an even more important piece than just the game, and that is their franchise quarterback in Dak Prescott. He goes down. Won't need surgery, but he's going down for 6 to 8 weeks. I know Jerry came out and said 4. Don't get your hopes up, Cowboy fans. He will not be returning until probably the Eagles game or after the Eagles game. So I kind of wiped Dallas out of the conversation here. Let's see. We're back.
Technical difficulties.
We're back. It's my friend Mo over here. But no, man, right. I just got into the NFC East conversation. Dak's lost for the Cowboys. Their season at this point, it's week 2. I'm calling it lost. Stick a fork in them. They have Cooper. Like, you didn't game plan for anything. Not only did you get worse offensively on the offensive line, your receiving core got more depleted. You did nothing to address the backup quarterback situation. So now you're rolling with a worse offensive roster with Cooper Rush. They might not win a game. The only foreseeable game they can win on the schedule is the New York Giants. And the New York Giants just showed me a little bit of something, at least in week 1 versus the Tennessee Titans. So I would put Dallas aside for the time being in this conversation. Who, Steve, is the bigger threat to the Eagles in the division? Is it the Washington Commanders, who just beat the Jacksonville Jaguars by 6? Or is it Brian Daboll, Saquon Barkley, and the New York Football Giants?
Yeah, that one's honestly kind of tough for me because I kind of want to lead Commanders, but I'm going with the Giants here, man.
Oh.
And you know why? Because one name in particular, Saquon Barkley.
Saquon?
Who, other than the Eagles defense beating themselves, but who made that game interesting against the Lions? DeAndre Swift.
Right.
That's a big problem for me. So,
okay, let me take it a step further because this is a conversation Phil had early on. He put a poll out on this early on in the week. So you're going with the Giants as a team. Who's a bigger worry concern to you as an Eagles fan the rest of this way? Carson Wentz or Saquon Barkley, as you just mentioned?
Man, you know me, I love Wentz. But it's Saquon. It's Saquon. I mean, I think you're starting to see a little bit of what Saquon can be so late in his career. I think he had a wonderful...
So late but so early in his career.
Yeah, it's like, beginning. What do you even say with Saquon?
Right.
But man, Eagles got shredded by DeAndre Swift. Imagine what Saquon can do.
Yeah, it's a great point because obviously their pass defense was way ahead of schedule compared to their rush defense. I don't know how I have any hope or faith that they clean that up. You just have to imagine with all the talent on the field. And Gannon probably has to have a short leash. Like Sirianni and Howie and these guys can't just be letting Jonathan Gannon roll out a wide 9 spread formation while they're getting gashed week in and week out. So I think here's my thing. I like Penn State boy. I've been rooting for Saquon, even though he's with the Giants, hasn't been able to stay healthy. Have him on my fantasy team in your league. Went all for me week 1. Love it, love it, love it. Right. He could take over a game throughout the year, multiple games throughout the year, but a game. He's a running back, though. As a quarterback, I'm more concerned with Carson Wentz because he has the ability to take over a stretch. Not saying that he will. We've seen the ups and downs in the last 3 years of his career, but he looked damn good this past Sunday with weapons.
Yeah, he did.
And
Threw 2 picks to look good.
Yeah, all right. He got his 2 picks in. Dude was 27 of 31 for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, with the last one being the game winner.
Okay? The eye test too. His deep balls, man.
Yeah, so that's what's scary. And I also think Washington has a more complete roster than The coaching staff's a lot more even now that Brian Dable's in New York, and he obviously pressed all the right buttons week 1, showed some stones, going for it. Love the 2-point conversion call late in the game after Saquon scored there. But I love Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron. I like Washington's defense more. I like Washington's offensive line more. I like Wentz more than Danny Dimes. I like their receivers more than the Giants receivers. Saquon is the only plus I give the Giants over the Commanders, and I think a quarterback has more of the ability to take over a stretch of games than the running back in Saquon Barkley can do. Now, Tennessee has a good defense, a good defensive front. I didn't watch a lot of the games, so I don't know how they game planned for them, but against Danny Dimes and that weak offensive line, I think more talented teams, more talented defenses are going to find ways to stack the box and take away Saquon and say, okay, Danny, beat us. Now, Danny Dimes, pretty sure he looked all right through the game-winning touchdown on Sunday, right? He looked okay. But I don't foresee that being a long-term thing in New York. So I'm going to go with the Commanders.
Over himself.
Yeah. The turf monster grabs his foot. But yeah, man, it is interesting. Now, just to kind of get off topic here before we get into Thursday Night Football, I brought this up to Phil and Scotty. So I want to bring it up to you because I know you still are a Carson guy. I'm more so off the train now. Like, I'm still in the same boat. Like, so let me ask you, where do you think this identity, this persona, belief that he is so bad came from? Like, dude, if you listen to podcasts, if you see posts on social media, if you listen to some people on ESPN, dude, they talk about him like he is a bottom 5 type of quarterback in this league. And I'm sorry, it couldn't be further from the truth. If you want to talk about leadership problems, possibly, if you want to talk about locker room issues, if you want to talk about, he has sometimes he gets in his own head and he holds onto the ball and throws stupid interceptions or whatever the case may be. Don't get me wrong. He has his ups and downs. Steve, outside of and it was a horrific year. As an Eagles fan who paid close attention to it, it was a terrible ending here.
You have to admit that.
But the 3 years prior to that, let's just go through it, right? And we're filling time here, okay? Rookie year, the numbers weren't great. He threw like 14 or 16 picks. But the eye test showed you and had Eagles fans believing in Pennsylvania time. Year after that, he was the MVP of the league. They don't win the Super Bowl, get home field advantage without him. The year after that, he comes back early off the injury, breaks vertebrae in his back. Even though he has to be replaced again, the numbers were better than they were in his MVP season. Year after that, comes back, has you and I playing wide receiver, throws for over 4,000 yards, leads them to a division title, wins 4 straight at the end of the year, gets him a home playoff game, gets concussed on the first or second drive by a dirty hit. Comes back. So the first 3 years, I'd say, were pretty spectacular, Steve.
Absolutely.
No? Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, the injuries were always a concern. Like, oh, man, like we finally got him in a playoff game and he gets hurt. So there was that conversation going on. But the talent-wise was great. 2020. Disaster comes. Everything breaks down. He looks like a hot mess. He's gone. Goes to Indy. Now, clearly there was a disconnect, personality-wise, leadership-wise, whatever, behind the scenes. And I know he ultimately didn't get the job done in Week 18 versus the Jags. The entire team didn't. The defense let up a lot of points. Jonathan Taylor, who was a monster all year, got shut down, right? Wentz had a top 5, 6 QBR last year. His TD to interception ratio was like 26-7 or something.
So 27-7, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so everyone took those interceptions. Like, they were hard. Some of them were bad looking, but they like took those and expanded them. Like, he threw 15 of them.
Yeah.
And now this year he has a great start in Washington. Everybody talks about him like he's at the bottom 5 quarterback. I don't understand it from a talent perspective. I don't understand it.
Yeah, no, neither do I. And I think a lot of that falls into what we touched on with Hurts is the box score watchers. They're like, Wentz threw.
You're right. He fumbled.
Because he's got the eye test. I mean, obviously, I was watching the Eagles game.
Some people tell you no. Some people tell you no.
I just don't agree. I don't get
because
that.
of the turnovers. Because that's why.
Ah,
But that's been the case once. 2020 was the case of that.
right.
He threw 7 interceptions last year, but people make it out to be like he threw 22 of them. Like, dude,
I just don't get
Jameis
it.
Winston threw 30 interceptions last year, and people speak more highly of Jameis Winston than they do Carson Wentz. But yet Carson Wentz is a disaster because he has turnover issues.
I just
I've
don't get it. It's
never
like,
seen
is it
an
his
agenda like it.
it doesn't make sense to me, man. And I love being a Philly fan. Let's be real, Philly fans are quick to hate.
Right.
In
Like,
my like
2020 seems to be an outlier at the moment.
mhm.
This is his this is his 6th year in the NFL. I just told you and read you the numbers that he's had one. Now, it was a
One.
disastrous year.
And it's coming off the COVID.
Right.
It was
And
the COVID
clearly,
year.
yeah. And clearly it was timed. The relationship was fractured. You had to move on. I'm not arguing against it. And I'm okay with it now. But this whole identity, this whole thought process, this whole agenda that he is just horrible. I don't know if I've watched it. Like, I don't know if I've seen something like this with somebody else. Like, why is Jameis Winston viewed more highly than Carson Wentz?
Look at it this way too. Fantasy football drafts, right? Look at the names above Carson Wentz. Davis
And look at the
Mills.
numbers he just put up.
Yeah, like it's just total disrespect. Total disrespect.
It is, man. It is, but we'll see that. So that's why I have Washington and himself more as a threat, because I just think, like, Washington to me has been a quarterback away from being a division contender for a couple years now. And with that defense and with Terry McLaurin and with Riverboat Ron, and if he can prove to be that, they're going to be in the conversation with us. I'll tell you this right now. Think about this disrespect, Steve. They're underdogs against Detroit this week. It is the first
Really? I
time
didn't
the
see that.
Lions it is the first time the
Wow.
Lions have been a favorite in years.
Where's that game at?
I believe it's in Detroit, but
Okay.
Detroit's 2.5-point favorites.
I don't like
I'm
that, man.
all over Washington. All over Washington.
Yeah, right. Give me my money.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Another game. I'll get into
That's
this more
absurd.
over the weekend. I love Pittsburgh. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Pittsburgh is underdogs at home against the New England Patriots. Blasphemy.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't like
Totally.
Mitch Trubisky. I know TJ Watt's out. New England is horrible.
Mhm.
I know they got Bill. They have nothing offensively.
That's it. Yeah,
Literally
that's it.
nothing. And it's in Pittsburgh too. So I really like the Steelers this week. That's an early pick for you. But let's get into tonight's Thursday night football matchup, an AFC West rivalry. The Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert traveling to Kansas City Arrowhead to take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Boy, we're getting spoiled with Thursday night early on. Now, I know it's about to take a big dip. I know the expectations set high here with Thursday
It's always
night
early
football.
on in the year we get the good Thursdays.
And then we're gonna get a taste of our own medicine soon. We're gonna, oh yeah, you thought you had good Thursday night football? Here you go. But this has potential to be a game of the year type of candidate early on in the season. I'm nervous for this one. So guys, again, if you don't know, if you're 21 or older, if you have DraftKings, head on over to DraftKings, because they are once again doing the Thursday night early payout. Your team, place a bet on one of the money lines. If your team gets up by 7 or more early in the game, even if they lose the game, you get paid out immediately. $250 max bet. That's what I'm doing again tonight. But I'm nervous, man. Like the juice is telling me to go. Well, like obviously the juice is there for the Chargers. But it being an Arrowhead, Patty kind of just gave the middle finger to everybody last week. He made an Arizona Cardinals team that I didn't think was going to be good. Like, I don't think they were like really a playoff team this year, but they're supposed to be a talented group in Arizona. He made them look like a bottom 2 defense, made them look silly last week. It worries me. I'm leaning Chargers early on. It scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, I remember before the show.
Allen.
Yeah, that's a big factor too. I remember before the show, you had asked me for our pick'ems, who I'm taking, man, and it's tough. Like, it's tough. I think I'm leaning. What's that?
It's one of the tougher games you're going to pick all year.
Yeah, and I think I'm leaning. I think I'm leaning Chiefs. But man, it's Chargers. That Chargers defense, no joke.
Yeah.
Even
Herbert, no joke.
Yeah, even without Keenan Allen, Herbert's going to get
right.
Herbert's going to get.
I trust the Chargers defense more than I do the Chiefs, but I think that Chiefs defense can play above expectation in front of that crowd in the home opener. Like this game feels very odd to me, man. And
put it this way: the Chargers are going to score more points, but the Chiefs are going to win.
But the Chiefs,
man, I love circling back to that.
That was the worst thing I've ever witnessed. But listen, either way this game goes, whoever the winner is, I think kind of puts the division and the rest of the league on notice for both sides. So you have the Chargers, who I picked preseason to win the AFC West and to make noise this year. I love Justin Herbert as an MVP candidate this year. They come out, they beat the Las Vegas Raiders in week 1, division rival, right? Now they have to go on the road and play that other division rival I rank them ahead of. So the Chargers start 2-0, beating the Raiders and Chiefs in their division early on in the year on the road. That puts them on notice.
It's a great point.
Reversely, if Patty and the Chiefs come out and start 2-0 with a monster win in Arizona and then beat the Chargers, who people think are ahead of the Chiefs already, and let's say Patty balls out on their defense, they're going to put me and the league on notice and say, I don't care what on paper what our defense looks like compared to the other. I don't care that we don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. We are still the team to beat in the AFC. So either way, I think this sets up the storyline the rest of the way.
That's the interesting thing with the Chiefs too. Like their defense, it really doesn't matter because their offense is so high octane. It's their offense could put up 40 points a game.
Yeah.
With Patty Mahomes if week 1 is a sign of what's to come, they can put up monster numbers.
Well, I think that's what's key this game is. Now I know it's an Arrowhead, so again, things could be skewed a little bit tonight in the home opener, but like the rest of this division, obviously like Denver going out and getting Russell Wilson, they had to get a quarterback, right? The Raiders go out and get Devontae Adams, but what the Chargers did to because the Chiefs and Mahomes set the gold standard. So now every other team in the division has to play catch up. That's what they've done this offseason. That's why this division is so tough and so great early on. But what did the Chargers do to catch up to the gold standard? All right, we already have our quarterback. We already have weapons offensively. We have a good offensive line. I'm going to go out and I'm going to put together a defense that can slow down Patrick and the Chiefs offense. If he lights them up tonight, I know it's in Kansas City for you, but that almost puts that to bed. Like you still can't. You went out, you got J.C. Jackson. You went out, you got Khalil Mack to add to Joey Bosa. You paid Derwin James. Mm-hmm. You still can't stop me. So it is a scary sight tonight if the Chiefs go out and win, or not just win, but put up 28 plus type of points. And the 28's not low, but it's still a good night if you put up 28 points. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how this game plays out. I'm going Chargers. You're going Chiefs.
I'm going Chiefs here.
Going to be one hell of a matchup. Like I said, go get your bets in. Come on.
Go to the beer store, guy.
DraftKings. There you go.
For a show tonight.
That is going to wrap up this Thursday edition of Trending in the AM. Like I said, I'm your host this morning, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98, filling in for Phil Stifle for the rest of this week and the first half of next week. I got my man Steve with me. He's the host of Fist First podcast here on DSM Media. Check him out on Twitter at Fist First Action. Fist First will also be going out today. What are we previewing this week, Steve?
Got UFC Fight Night, Sanhagen and Yadong. It's going to be a good one, guys.
So check that episode out. Look for it later on this afternoon, live here on DSM Media on our Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook channel. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, head on over to @DSM_media. Hit that follow button. We greatly appreciate it. Check us out on YouTube. The road to 700 subscribers. We greatly, greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, do whatever you got to do. Have a great rest of your Thursday.